Hey there everybody, this is Bill and you're watching Bill's Box of Sound, and today's video is about two high fidelity reissues. One is Freedom of Choice by Devo from the Rhino Hi-Fi series, and the other one is the Yes album. This is from Atlantic Records, their 75th anniversary series, also a Rhino company, or Rhino distributes them, and this is in cooperation with Analog Productions and Acoustic Sounds and the QRP pressing plant. This is a double 45. This video has been repurposed from my live stream of June 22nd, 2024, with additions such as this edited in afterwards to complete my review. You'll see me popping in and out with different clothes and such, but the important part is I made the video this way in order to put all of my thoughts on these records across. So, take it away. Now, I've been talking about this since the middle of May. I've been talking about Devo, Freedom of Choice. What I hold in my hand right now is the original first pressing of the Warner Brothers album, Freedom of Choice. Yeah, this is the one that broke them, and it's got Whip It on it. And this is my original sleeve, and this is the original record that came out. Devo, Freedom of Choice, in 1980. So, back in the middle of May, Rhino announced that the Rhino Hi-Fi version of Freedom of Choice was going to be coming out, so I ordered it right away. And according to live streams that have since been deleted, wonder why. The guy from Rhino Records, what was his name, Patrick McDougal or something like that, he said that, oh yeah, we've got the Black Sabbath first album and the Devo Freedom of Choice all pressed, all ready to go, all ready to ship. Order them puppies, we'll get them out to you. Not in those words, but pretty much that was the gist. Okay, so I ordered mine, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and they wouldn't ship them. I contacted Rhino customer service by email because I don't have a phone number for them. Nothing. We're sorry you haven't gotten it yet. And then they finally said, oh, it's been shipped. Then a few days later they said, oh, it's been delayed again. So finally, last week, this morning, a package came at long last. Could this be the Devo Hi-Fi version of Freedom of Choice? Let's check it out. Right here. Devo, Freedom of Choice. It took long enough. Today is June 10th. Finally, we get it. Here it is. The Rhino Hi-Fi version of Freedom of Choice by Devo. Let's pull up this baby. It's got a little obi strip on it with some wonderful information about it. And it's got a gatefold cover with some fantastic pictures of the boys in the band. There you go. There's a thumbnail for you. That's this here. And inside of here is also a reproduction of the stuff that was on that sleeve I just showed you. Only it's just a cardboard thing here. It's not an actual album sleeve. And there is also liner notes of the original tape box of Freedom of Choice, side 1 and side 2. And inside are liner notes and an interview with co-producer Robert Margalef, who, if you remember, with Malcolm Cecil, he formed the Tonto's Expanding Headband and produced several of Stevie Wonder's best albums. Now, Joe Travers at that point came into the chat room and asked about the original CD of Freedom of Choice, noting that the original sounded terrible. Well, he's right, it did. The very first batch of compact discs that were ever released from what was then known as the Warner Elektra Atlantic catalog in that group of labels was this album, Freedom of Choice, on CD. And good old manufactured by Polygram in West Germany, because there was only a handful of CD plants in the world at that time. And the signal level on this is ridiculously low. I mean, it's quiet, and I'm not talking about noise level. The music's quiet, the volume's down, it just doesn't pack any punch. Now, there was also a couple of other versions that came out of that, including this reissue from Virgin in Europe. And check this out. It's a twofer of Oh No It's Devo and Freedom of Choice. So it's like, okay, we're going to take the fifth Devo album and the third Devo album and put them together. Only if you put the disc on, the newer album is going to play first, and then the older album is going to play after that. Somebody in the Virgin reissue department had their head screwed on wrong that day. Anyway, sound quality on this is significantly better, but it is currently out of print. So I don't know what version's available now, but since I was waiting for this to come out, here is the label on that, right there, for Devo Freedom of Choice. I did listen to my original Freedom of Choice, and the mix of the album, I mean, the highs really suffered. And in 1980, a lot of the vinyl manufacturing that went on in those days was pretty lax. They weren't making really good albums. Listened to this album a lot, but when I listened to it on a much better stereo than I had back in those days, very little high end, and the mix of the album was like almost mono. It was just, didn't have a lot of space in it. As you keep on listening to the album, things start spreading out a little bit. On Whip It, you've got a much wider space of drums and more elements of the mix, not just the main band, but the noises that are added, synthesizers, overdub vocals, harmonies, things like that. They start spreading out the stereo image, but still kind of like constricted to an almost mono. So I put some equalization on the original record and eked up the highs and the mids just a tiny little bit. And the album kind of perked up a bit. So that was interesting. Now, those of you who have been buying hi-fi records lately, or let's just say hi-fi remasters, you'll buy an album. Let me grab my original copy of Freedom of Choice here. You'll take a look at a record, at the original, and you'll see that the grooves go all the way into the middle of the record, practically. Not very much dead wax at the end of that record. So, just for those of you who don't already know, this area here on the edge, that be the dead wax. Okay. And a lot of times when you get a reissue or a remaster of an old album, because of the technological advances in mastering capabilities, you'll see that there's a much larger area of dead wax there. And it really does sound better. It's not because it's a lower volume, it's because of the way that it's cut with more dynamics. But strangely enough, and it's Kevin Gray that's doing the cutting on this, look at the Rhino high fidelity version of this. Almost exactly the same. This record's cut nice and loud. Of course, it's a lot more dynamic, and boy, there's a much larger sound stage on it. But you gotta remember that when you buy this, they say, oh, it's only $39. But when they add the tax and the shipping, it's going to cost you just over $50 to get this. So I had to buy it because I am a Devo devotee. One really cool thing, 5,000 copies made of this. I was pretty happy with my number. I mean, Mazzy's showing off his promo because it says 0000 because the promo copies are extra copies and not part of the 5,000s. But check out this number. I got number 999 out of 5,000. Ah! Love it. Fantastic. It's almost as good as getting number 666. Okay, back to the video. There's also a weird thing here. The copyright on this album, it says copyright Devo Incorporated and Primary Wave Music Intellectual Property Fund. Huh? Very interesting. I'd like to find out more about that, Devo people. But finally, I got a hold of that. Back to the comparison between the original LP and the Rhino Hi-Fi. There really isn't that much of a difference, but when you get down to it, the Hi-Fi one does sound a little bit better, but not by much. I understand their logic in releasing this title as it was Devo's breakthrough album and it had the hit with Whip It on it, but when it comes to sound quality, this is not the one that I would place high on my list to release. Personally, I think the Devo album with the best audio quality is their second LP, Duty Now for the Future, which was produced by Ken Scott. Mark Mothersbaugh recently was featured in an Amoeba Records video, one of those What's in My Bag videos, and he stated that he didn't like the sound of Duty Now for the Future when it first came out, and that he said if you want to listen to the best version of Duty Now for the Future, get the 8-track if you can. So I'm not going to argue with that logic, but I'm not going to agree with it. So, do I recommend this release? Not really. This is for diehard Devo fans only, like myself. And it's pretty cool that titles like this are getting high quality reissues. If you've got a really good quality first issue of Duty Now for the Future, and you notice that the high end is failing just a little bit, eke up just a little bit of the high end on it, just a tiny bit, and it'll come to life for you. So that is one high fidelity record I got. The other one, I told you I was going to buy it. Check this out. Boom. This is the Analog Productions in cooperation with Atlantic Records and their 75th anniversary. This is the 2LP 45 RPM remaster of the Yes album. The Yes album was originally released in 1971. Original gatefold. Also numbered. Here we go. Guy got number 1822 out of 5,000. And these are not cheap. $60. $60. Woo! But oh my God, this sounds great. I was waiting for this to come in, and I purposely did not listen to the old one before I got it. I listened to this, and it was so good. I'm just cranking it up louder and louder because it felt so good to hear this album mastered so well. And I remember when I last made a major purchase of a phono cartridge. I got a moving coil cartridge, and I wanted to calibrate the height of the cartridge and everything else, the stylus angle. I used this, my original copy of the S album, to tweak my cartridge because of the sibilance and the high frequencies. First song on side 2, I've Seen All Good People. I was listening to the mandolin or bouzouki that Steve Howe was playing, and depending on how I had my cartridge adjusted, it sounded like the body of the instrument was getting thicker or thinner, but also the sibilance of the singing. I've seen all good people turn their heads each day, so satisfied. I'm on my way. Those S's, the sibilance was really getting to me. But not on this new one. Oh my God, Kevin Gray, who also cut the Devo, really did a job on this. This album truly, I am not exaggerating, has never sounded this good, because the night after I listened to this, I listened to my original again, and wow, that sibilance got to me. I had to turn the record down to listen to it properly. The sibilance and some of the extreme high-end signals are also a little overbearing on the CD version of the Yes album. And this is the first version that was ever released. I can't speak for subsequent versions of it. But another thing that I noticed when I re-listened to my original LP of the Yes album was compression. Having listened to this record for the last 50 years, I didn't notice it as much, but giving a real analytical listen to Yours Is No Disgrace, I could hear the compression kick in a couple of times whenever the band hits a really loud spot in the song, in contrast from a quieter spot. Tape hiss is also audible on both the original LP and the original CD. So maybe they didn't have a first generation tape, as they say was used on the Analog Productions reissue. During the more intricate vocal parts of the new version, I not only heard John Anderson singing, it felt as though he was singing in the room. I mean, it was just so much more clearer and direct. It sounded like it was recorded yesterday. Chris Squire's bass had a bit more character and growl without overtaking the other instruments. They all blended in. During Starship Trooper, when they go and take the acoustic guitar break and the acoustic guitar moves over to one side, I noticed a bit more than I ever have before the guide acoustic guitar playing just before all the vocals kick in for that part. Also, never really noticed in the clap the pounding on the floor at the ambient sound as much as I heard it before. I mean, it was there, but it's not a great recording for that particular piece. It's an acoustic piece by Steve Howe, and the quality of the recording really isn't what's on display for that particular track, but it's kind of interesting. Also, people complain about having to get up and flip the sides twice as often for these 45 RPM versions. But for me, the sonic improvements were so great that after each side, I was so blown away that I needed to sit back in and soak in what I had just heard and recoup and flip the sound. And I would be interested in hearing a 33 RPM version of this one from the same electronics with Kevin Gray remastering it, as this is a 45 RPM. But I have a hunch that the combination of the mastering chain, the 45 RPM process, and the manufacturing process of QRP really adds up to make the difference that shows you where that extra money goes when you spend it on this reissue. Very highly recommended. So, good God, this is wonderful. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. So, if you dig this album, and you dig it a lot, oh, please, if you could afford it, pick this up from Acoustic Sounds. Now, I know that they also put out Fragile, and Fragile also came out with a super deluxe version of the album with 5.1 and Dolby Atmos and everything else. But the Yes album is probably my favorite Yes album out of all of them. And I like a lot of them. So, yeah. All right. That is my opinion, and I'm sticking to it for the time being. And if you've got comments on this, please use the comment section below to voice your opinion, please. And if you like this video, please hit the like. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your parents if they dig it as well. But I had a great time. I hope you did too. Thanks for watching as always and subscribing and whatever. I do live streams most Saturday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States. So you might want to check that out every now and again. As I said at the beginning, parts of this video were taken from one of those live streams. All right, I've said enough. Go listen to some music and enjoy it. Later.